July 4, 1776. Unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and the nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evidences a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them.
He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of the public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them unto compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representatives' houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judicial powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us,
for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act within which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity. And we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and the consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in this necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends.
We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of the colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the states of Great Britain and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that a free and independent state, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of the Declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Signed by order and in behalf of the Congress, John Hancock, President. Attest, Charles Thomas, Secretary.
I almost feel like you should say amen at the end of that.
Yeah.
But reading through, you notice a lot of the things they're saying in there are things that are happening again.
Yeah.
Except for instead of using a standing army, they use their Department of Justice.
Oh, it's interesting. There's this one guy up in Seattle. I think he's in Seattle or Oregon. I don't remember if he's in either he's in Portland or Seattle. I think he's probably in Portland because that's where. Well, they're both pretty bad. But he was taking. He just goes around and takes videos of what's going on, and there's these camps where it's like a homeless camp that the state has set aside, and it's basically a tent. You take a huge parking lot. It's probably over an acre, and it's just full of tents, and it's where a lot of the Antifa people were housed by the city. And it was like it's crazy how pernicious some of the stuff that's going on is. The Antifa people would go riot at night, and then they'd sleep and have the government live off the government dole in the day. And it's like, why is the city paying for this? And when he started filming them, people started throwing rocks at him and stuff like that, and he had to get out of there because he was taking the veil off of what's there. And it's just like there's some crazy stuff that's going on that we need to be aware of. Today might.
What?
Sorry, I was just gonna say today might be a little windy.
Yeah. We have Russell with us. He's our special guest for today.
Hey, Russell.
No, there's talking in there that the actions of the crown had caused insurrections among the people, but now the crown is creating insurrections within the people. Yes, our form of government is not a monarchy or oligarchy or anything like that. However, they seem to run themselves and conduct themselves in such a way.
That's why it's such a people. If you hear it on the news, it's always laughed at pretty much. Where people say drain the swamp, they're referring to get rid of the pernicious powers. That's what it's referring to. That's why it's so common to hear drain the swamp, is because people are sick of these forces behind the names that are the lobbyists, the different people who are investing in, like, you got George Soros. Gingrich had mentioned how Soros had put millions into local judiciary elections, and he was on Fox, and Fox is supposed to be the right-wing one, which don't believe any media. It doesn't matter where it's from. But on Fox, they're like, oh, we can't say that, and they shut him up. And Newt basically said, oh, that's a forbidden topic now. But I don't remember the language he said, because it was a Latin term that he used, which means forbidden. But it's one of those things that we're living those times, just like what our forefathers went through. And one of the things that I really liked that it said in here was how they repeatedly appealed to the crown. They tried to solve it peacefully. And we're at that stage where we have to do everything we can to solve it peacefully. And that's what, listening to conference, that's the big takeaway that I had was, okay, things are rough, but we need to do everything we can peacefully, and then trust the Lord at this point. We need to wait for further instruction, wait for,
Yeah, it's just like a lot of times when I write my representatives, it falls on deaf ears. They more or less say, well, we're going to do what we want to do, and to hell with you. I know better than you. They have convinced themselves that they are this all-powerful, being, that we send them to represent themselves and not to represent us. They've forgotten their place.
The thing that, relating it to daily life, you think you have your kids, and you want to raise them to grow up, and you want to raise them to think for themselves and to be empowered, to be strong. But also, in doing that, they learn to not listen to you. They learn to stop listening to you. And when you look at how Satan fell, pride is called the original sin. It's the original sin because it's when Satan thought that he knew better than God. And because he thought he knew better than God, he fought against God. He was the morning star. He was a bright light. He was learning and growing. He was a child growing up. But then he got to the point where he's like, okay, I don't need you anymore. I'm going to do my own thing. And in this life, our kids do that, and we do that with our parents. But we're not perfect as parents, and our parents aren't perfect. It's a little bit more even playing ground in that sense, where we're all just trying to learn and get back to our Heavenly Father. But we really do need to look at the way Christ showed humility. He said, thy will be done. That's one of the greatest things that I think we can learn from Christ is that humility of putting God first. That even in his prayer, he says, thy will be done, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven.
We are a free people. We're supposed to be a free and independent people, but we're not at this point. You're free in the sense that you can do what you want as long as you ask permission, pay fees,
Play within the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've stolen your right to life, liberty, and property. It's like we've talked about before. You can buy land, you can build a house on it, you can pay that house off. But if you don't pay your property taxes, they'll steal it. It becomes theirs. And that is wrong.
If you don't get the right permission to put a deck on your house, or to build a garage, or to pour cement, or to dig in your own field, if you don't get the right permissions, they'll fine you and they'll take you to jail.
Mm-hmm. We have to find a way to reignite that spirit of independence, that love of freedom. Because how many times did they say in conference last Saturday, I, the Lord God, make you free? That's the way that we're intended to be. That's the way that we're intended to live. And you look at the First Amendment, yeah, it guarantees our right to speech, press, religion, and redress. But there's some places you can't protest without a permit. I mean, depending on which side of the line you fall on. The press is free to lie and choose what you can and can't say. And back on speech, Google, Twitter, Facebook, everybody, they monitor what you say and reach and the influence that you have if you don't agree with them.
You say the wrong words, then you can speak, but they just won't tell anybody else. You won't. It's not transmitted. It doesn't pass the. It's not okay. It's not.
Yeah.
It's silence. It's it's shadow banned.
Yeah. And then some of our rights that have been curtailed and stolen from us the most come from the Second Amendment. At the time the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791, there were citizens who owned their own warships, at the time a battleship.
Mm-hmm.
So the intent at the time that the Bill of Rights was ratified was to be as well armed, well equipped, and well trained as the government. And this whole saying they never could have foreseen AR-15s and AK-47s and machine guns, that's just a lazy argument. They were inventors. Technology had not stood still from the dawn of time until then, and they knew it wasn't going to then. They also had invented over a decade before the Declaration of Independence. It's called a puckle gun, and it was able to fire more than one shot. It's kind of an early version of the Gatling gun. But now, so the original intent is to be able to buy and own the same things that the government has. If I wanted to, I should be able to buy an aircraft carrier. Park it in the canal. But I should be able to buy machine guns, explosives, short-barreled rifles, suppressors, all that stuff. And now, they've kind of somewhat found ways around the short-barreled rifle laws with the pistol braces. But just this week, and I posted that on our Facebook page, there's
Honey
a company that makes, they make a clone of the Honey Badger, which is a little AR in 300 blackout, and the ATF, which is not an elected office or branch of our government, just comes down and says, "Oh yeah, we're going to make this decision, we're going to make that decision," and it's all arbitrary. That's not the way things work. You don't get to make rules and you don't get to pass laws as an independent agency.
It's a committee that's been appointed, taking that authority on themselves.
Yes. And so they say, well, look at this. Yeah, well, it doesn't fall within our definitions of this or that. But yeah, screw it. This is illegal now. So they send out this letter to cease and desist to the manufacturer, and now all these people who at the time of buying this gun was perfectly legal, now in retrospect, after the ATF changes their mind, makes all these people felons.
They don't take.
You want to know why everybody's pissed off, especially the people you don't want pissed off at you? Keep stilling and telling us that we're awful, and you do something that's legal at the time, and now you make it illegal, and then you're going to retroactively make somebody a felon.
And even the argument that has nickel and dime the idea of the Second Amendment, most of that argument, when you talk to people and you say something like, we should be able to own anything, they'll be like, oh, that's crazy. And the whole reason that they have this idea that that's crazy is because of it's unfamiliar and it sounds scary. And so because it sounds scary, it's something that's easy to ignore. It's easy to get out to basically say, well, it's not my problem. Yeah, sure, I want everybody to be safe, and I want everybody to feel safe. And it's the fact of the matter is we've not educated ourselves, and because the citizenship people aren't educated on firearms, they aren't educated on guns and stuff. You have generals who say things like, 5.56 is a far more lethal and deadly round than the .308. It's like, what? Like, most people, if they hear that, they're like, okay, if a general says it, then yeah, we don't want those military rounds on the 5.56, or it was a video I saw that was back in 2013 where a general was coming out. I don't remember which general. I can find it and send it to you. But
they're just as corrupt as the politicians.
Exactly, and it was,
they are politicians, but they're not elected; they're appointed.
It's crazy, but the fact that we don't know the difference between these different firearms, the way that they operate, we don't know these things. It makes it easier for the government to simply just say, "Oh, that's not your problem. You should just trust us." And when you just trust the government, you're basically opening yourself up to be taken advantage of. It's like trusting a pedophile with your kid. You don't want to do that.
No, and for them to come out and say that the 5.56 is more devastating. Well, terminal ballistics and whatnot, yeah, the 5.56 does a whole bunch of different things when it hits people. But there's some of us out there that aren't generals who were actually involved in the fighting, who've actually seen it with their own eyes and or done these things, know for a fact that 7.62-308 is far more devastating than 5.56, where you can sit there and you can just plug away on somebody 10, 11 times before they go down, because it's such a small, fast projectile that it's just shooting through them and not doing anything. Because there's a whole bunch of different stuff that goes into what happens when a bullet hits you. Permanent wound channel, temporary wound channel, and so it just
hunting. There's literally there are places where it's illegal to hunt with a 5.56 because it's an inhumane way to kill a deer, because it doesn't kill it fast enough.
Are you going to try and take down an elk with the 5.56 or 223?
It can be done, but yeah, it's you're more likely to injure it and it run off and you don't even get the kill. It'll probably go and die somewhere where you can't find it. A 308 will do much better at bringing it down, and because it does more damage. But yet you have generals who know better, saying that it doesn't. It's the 5.56 or the 223 is a military round, and it's more deadly and it's more devastating. It's like, no, you're just fear mongering. You're fear mongering against the public. That, like, I literally had this conversation with my kid earlier this week, with my oldest daughter, and I came to the realization that so much of politics is people telling lies to ignorant people when everybody else that knows, and anybody who has any experience knows better. But it's basically like that person who comes and tries to sell a product to somebody who doesn't know any better. And when it's your first exposure, you're going to believe the person that you hear. Politics is all geared towards the people who are ignorant. If you can get enough ignorant people to believe you, then you can do anything you want. But that's not the way it is. So, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm right there with you. The caliber argument comes down to what's the best tool for the job. It's and we all do this. We've all used a crescent wrench as a hammer. Well,
yep.
Well, some of you may not have. But that comes down to using the right tool for the job, and that's all dependent upon the situation. I have an M1A, so the civilian version of the M14. I love it. I can shoot out to 1,000 yards with it. It's a devastating round, but it's not worth a damn in a house. It all just comes down to having the right tool for the job. But, I mean, we've spun off on guns, but this is kind of an all-encompassing subject. There's a reason why the Second Amendment was so high up on the Bill of Rights. Because we have the First Amendment, like we said, covers speech, press, religion, and redress. So this is covering the way to do things peacefully, when the Second Amendment was set as your fallback. If you get to the point where we're at now, where your representatives are ignoring you and just doing as they damn well please, you have the ability to force them to do what's right. But as long as they keep us comfortable, we're not going to do that.
If you look in, I found this last week when I shared it with you last week, but in Doctrine and Covenants 101, it gives the parable of the widow who she asks the judge to avenge her dead husband, and the judge is an unrighteous judge, and he's like, no, I'm not going to take care of that. No, it's not my problem. No, he says no, and then finally the widow persists enough to where the judge finally says, to be rid of you, yes, I'll avenge your husband. Just leave me alone for the rest of my life, type of a thing. And it gives that parable, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of fun, but basically that need for being persistent. Right after it gives that parable, it's towards the end of the section. I want to say it's like in the 85 or something. I don't remember what verses, but towards the end of that section, the next thing it says is, and this is how it views Zion, or something like that. This is how it views the people. First, take your addresses and send them to the judge and petition the judge. And it uses a word called importune. I didn't know what that word meant. I looked it up. Importune basically means to harass until you get your way. It says importune the judge. And when the judge ignores you, importune the governor. And when the governor ignores you, importune the president. And when the president ignores you, then will I come out from my hiding place and I will vex the nation. And that's God speaking. He'll after we've done our part in importuning, in harassing them until they capitulate, in making sure that we maintain our freedom and making sure that we maintain our liberties. And it was so beautiful to me the way that it was worded out, and I'll find it and do a better job sharing it. But it was so mind-opening to me. And then going into conference, that's the thing that came to my mind over and over again, is how we need to do our part, and we need to use that First Amendment now. We need to stand up, and we need to speak what and demand freedom and demand liberty. And if we don't, then God's never going to come and save us from this if we're not willing to, and we're not going to be able to do it ourselves without His help.
What else did the Lord say? If we allow these things to happen, He's going to hold it on our heads just as much as He is the people who caused it.
Yeah.
So I mean, while you still can, we need to be active. We need to be signing petitions. We need to be writing our representatives saying, this is wrong or this is right, and pushing them, reminding them that they are not in an all-powerful position. They are an elected representative. They are an employee. They're not leaders. They're not officials. They are a representative to do as I say, how we say to do it. We have the tools to take care of this peacefully, and that's what we need to do until the time comes that is just no longer an option. But we have to do everything in our power to do things peacefully, or else you lose the validity of fighting for independence if you just go straight to action.
And the thing is, it's not hard, but it takes effort. It's not hard to do. Like so many things in life, they're not really hard to do. You just have to keep doing them. And it takes effort. Instead of relaxing in the nights, sometimes it's better to look up and to read what's going on. What are politicians doing? Sometimes it's better to just send a letter, do something instead of spending that hour or two relaxing, watching a show or doing something. Every now and then, put that aside and actually do something to better the community and the country and the nation that we live in. And that little bit of effort, that's not hard, but just done consistently, that's what's required of us. The whole don't run more than you can, you're not required to run farther faster than you can run. And that type of thing. It's not a requirement for us to completely forego everything in life and dedicate everything to this part of life, but it is a requirement for us to do something every so often. Just do something.
Yeah, and this whole mentality of I don't want to know because it's just going to make me mad, that shit's not going to cut it anymore. It's just not. Because not wanting to know, not wanting to get upset, not wanting to experience anything outside of your bubble that makes you feel comfortable, it's not going to cut it anymore. I don't think people realize how perilous of a ledge we're on. Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we have to wake up, and we have to wake others up as well to try and fix this. Everybody will sit there and complain about the way that things are going in government. Right, left, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Everybody's mad.
Yeah.
But nobody's willing to do anything. Why aren't you willing to do anything? This is not just your future, this is the future of your posterity. Do you want them to be slaves? I don't want to be a slave. And even more than I don't want to be a slave, I don't want my posterity to be enslaved. God cherishes freedom so much that how many times does he reference it that we are meant to be free? I know in our doctrine he does quite a bit. In our doctrine he speaks about, I have made you free, maintain your freedom. It is a sacred honor and a sacred duty to uphold your freedom.
It's really what when you go back to the pre-existence, it's what we fought about. It's why Satan rebelled against God. He wanted to force others to do what was right, and God said, no, we need to have the ability to try and make mistakes. We need to have that ability to have experiences like that. And it's one of those things that it's the difference between being a trained animal, a pet, and being a person. It's so much of a core part of who we need to be that you can't sit and listen to the Declaration of Independence and not be stirred. It's just either I don't know how to describe it.
When you sit there and you realize that our government is oppressing us more than the crown ever oppressed the founders, you should be pissed. I am. They sent me and a whole bunch of people like me 10,000 miles away to fight somebody else's war, and then come home and restrict my freedoms and my liberties, things that we hold dear in this nation.
They used your desire to protect the freedoms for your family for their petty squabbles, for their political maneuvering, for their political clout, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Yeah, that it is. I don't know, but we read the Declaration of Independence for you, but I recommend that you read it and study it for yourself, and don't just read it like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah, this is what it says, like you would read anything. Read it with the intent to understand it. Read it and ponder it like you would your scriptures.
Invest yourself into it, into the study of it, because it's not just something that happened once. It's not just a cool thing. It's integral to our life. It's integral to our society, and if we don't understand it and defend it, we won't have it, and we won't have our society. We won't have our freedom. We won't have our way of life. Our very, very living will be taken from us simply because of our own laziness and abdication of responsibility. I love that term, abdication.
Also, our wanting and our desire to be comfortable. Life's not comfortable. Our existence here in America, in the United States, is somewhat of a fallacy.
The whole idea of a consumer economy is not. That's word salad to get you to think that it's normal and right, and it's not. A consumer economy means that you're the fatted pig ready for consumption.
Our perception of reality is skewed because of so many factors and so many things. Because our reality here in the U.S. is far different than somebody's reality in a police state.
Do you know what communism does to a people? Communism,
It starves them.
it is literally molesting the soul of the people. It takes it's the same symptoms that you have from a child who has been molested and abused and destroyed as a child, an innocent child. It breaks the soul of the people. People stop trusting each other. People they stop having any kind of idea that you can grow together and be together, because everything is so manipulated and it abuses and it breaks the people, and it's wrong. It's so wrong. It's wrong on not just like a societal level, but on a spiritual level. It breaks the individual. And the thing that's so bad about it is it takes the good intentions of, oh, we want everybody to have enough, we want everybody to be taken care of. Those are good thoughts and good intention. That's why it's so seductive to those that are ignorant. It takes those desires and it basically says, trust in the dictator, trust in the state, trust in whatever monarch or whatever leader that they want to put before you, and they'll make sure everybody's taken care of. And it makes it so that you no longer have to think, you no longer have to have that freedom for yourself, you no longer have to have that agency, and the people that buy into it, that's what they see, and that's they're pawns used for the molestation of the rest.
But they'll sit there and pat themselves on the back and be self-righteous about how compassionate they are, because they want to be compassionate with somebody else's things, somebody else's livelihood, somebody else's freedom. They're willing to sign over somebody else's stuff because, well, they either don't have it, or they're too lazy, or they're too dumb to really understand. We have these social programs, like we have welfare and we have Medicare, we have Medicaid, and that's all well and good. There are certain circumstances and certain individuals who I think should be allowed those things. I mean, there are people who legitimately can't work. There are people who legitimately need help, and we're far enough along as a society that those who cannot provide for themselves, we shouldn't just let them starve to death and live in the streets until they die. We should take care of those people who legitimately cannot take care of themselves. But if you're too lazy to take care of yourself and you're too lazy to work, I have no sympathy for you. It's not my job to take care of you.
It's one of those things where before the social programs that we have, before they existed, when you got help and when you were down and you couldn't do it yourself, you got help from the community, you got help from the churches, you got help from the people around you. The problem with the social programs being in a federal level and in a government, even in a state level, the problem with that is it's some entity that you have no connection to giving you money, and you feel no responsibility towards the betterment of that entity. When it's your neighbor that has taken half of their crop and given it to your family because you had something happen to yours, you owe that person, and you know it. You see them, and you want to pay them back. You want to be the fact that they helped you, and the fact that you received that, you needed that. It's humbling, but it's also empowering to know that, okay, I can do that for someone else. I'm going to work to where I can do that for someone else. When it's just some unknown handout that you just go pick up your check, you don't have that. It takes away the personal connection that we have when we share with each other, when we help each other out, and it breaks down our communities. If you can help someone avoid getting on the welfare and getting on social programs, do everything you can to help them, because that is what a community does. That's what a neighborhood does. That's what church groups do. That's what you do as people, and it betters your whole community. It makes it so that when you take your kids and, oh no, one of your kids gets sick or something, and if they can help, they're right there to help you. You want to help each other, and that's something that is good. That's one of the things that makes America America, is the people wanting to help each other. That whole on September 12th, everybody standing together. We all wanted to stand together and defend each other and to help where we could. That's something that is important to America. But when you take away that thing that binds us, the opportunities we have to have charity for each other and to share charity with each other on an individual level, when we don't have those, then it's like, oh, all I know is my taxes are taken. How much of my check is taken and given to the government? Oh, and these people are getting that? It's not a charitable thing. It's coercion.
It's extortion.
It's extortion. And it hides what it's doing behind your goodwill towards the people who need it, because there are people who need it, and to discredit them and to say, oh, everybody's lazy, that's just wrong. There are people who are in a crappy situation and they need that help, and you want them to get it. But the fact is, 30 cents, I think it was, last time I looked it up, 30 cents out of every dollar that's used for our welfare system actually makes it to someone who needs it. When you go to a private charity, it's more like 80 to 90 cents. Yeah, it's not every dollar. When you have a neighbor that you can help out, that's every dollar. But when you give to a private charity, 80 to 90% of what you give usually ends up to the people that it needs to. The taxes that are taken from your paycheck for welfare, 30 cents of those dollars. What happens to the other 70 cents? Bureaucratic indiscretion.
Bullshit.
Yep.
There's a place for those programs for the people that need it, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that if you legitimately can't work, you can't take care of yourself, that's fine. Let us do that for you. But being lazy and not wanting to work or not wanting to better yourself through more gainful employment because it might be harder, that's not good enough. I am all about, as far as the social programs and things that we have, as far as that goes, I'm okay with the programs that offer a hand up. Programs that pay for school, as long as you're using those programs to invest in an education that's actually going to make you money and benefit society. If you want to use that money to go get a degree in something stupid that's not going to make you any money, well, then why did you do it? There's all sorts of programs that pay tuition for either traditional college classes or trades, which trades are really short right now, because for so many years they sat there and they pound the pulpit saying, if you don't go to college, you're not going to amount to anything, and nobody's going to hire you, and you're not going to make a decent living, blah blah blah. And there's also the aversion to work. Some people a lot of people, they just don't want to have a physical job. They want to sit behind defense. They want to sit behind their computer in their pajamas and don't want to work. There's not enough of those tech jobs for everybody that's trying to go into that field. Same with a lot of the other things that you would go to college for. While the trades are, well,
Sure.
if you're in the trades, you're living on the hog right now. But I mean, there's so many opportunities out there to get a job where you're going to have to work your ass off and you're going to have to use your hands, and it might suck. But I mean, it provides an awesome living. And there's always that pride of being able to say, yeah, I worked my butt off and I made my living for my family by the sweat of my brow and the cuts on my hand.
There's a thing about it as well, is like, and I think that this college itself is not what it used to be. So, for instance, there's a book that there's a guy that came up with Pascal's triangle, Blaise Pascal, and he was a mathematician. He's a Christian, but he wrote a book called Pensée. I think he's French. I don't remember where he is. He's somewhere in Europe. But he came up. This book he did. It was really, really good. Just short little things about his philosophy. But one of the things he talked about being an educated man is his view on an educated man was someone who you could be put in any circumstance, and because of the circumstance that he was in, he would be an asset to whatever problems needed to happen. You could ask his opinion on things, regardless of what realm he was in. He would be able to provide something that was useful and productive and helpful. That was his view on an educated person. You look at how many college professors who don't know how their own plumbing works. They don't know that poop goes in the toilet. That's it. That's the extent of their understanding of the very house that they live in. There's a part of being free is understanding what's around you and what's going on. To understand, you don't need to rely on someone else to come fix everything for you. You don't need to rely on someone to come do everything for you. And that's something that college these days does not provide. My wife's going to school right now. She strictly because she wants to gain knowledge, to better herself and to learn, and I love that. But she's been frustrated. This one of the classes she's taking right now. It's a child development class, and she's specifically told how, like, some of the assignments she's given are basically she's required to not think for herself, but to say how other people think. And her job is to parrot, to just be a little parrot for what someone else thinks. And she was told to defer to the people that have expertise and not give her opinion in the papers that she's writing. And it's like, that's an indoctrination class. It's straight up indoctrination. And she sees it, and I see it. Those people who are paying attention when they go to school, they see it. But it's everybody around you. That's kind of one of the reasons why you take college right as someone leaves home. You send them out to college is so that you can get them and shape the way that they think for the rest of their life. And that's not always a good thing.
No, it's not. I don't think it's any coincidence that the human brain is still developing until the age of 21, and you graduate at 22 if you went to school full time. I don't think that's a coincidence. It almost seems it's tailored that way. But see, and that's another thing. You had said something in your little tirade that really made me think about servitude is easy. You're told what to do. You're told what to think. Freedom requires work. And there's a natural aversion anymore to work for so many people. Because why would I do that when, somebody else will do it or technology will do it for me? Well, I mean, I'm not trying to beat anybody down or say anything bad about colleges and educations and jobs in the tech industry, because those are all very important things. I'm speaking about the people who just just lazy. And that's what is driving the society into the ground. Look at all these Antifa people, and all these people that don't have jobs, and they go out and they riot and they tear shit down and burn everything up, and they don't have a job, they don't have direction, and most of them come from upper middle class families where everything was given to them and there wasn't much expected or required. Now look at it. It's a good guess.
If you're trying to give your family everything, especially your kids, if you're trying to give them everything, that is a disservice. Because part of life, there's no substitute for experience. There's no substitute for experiencing trouble and trial and hard work. There's no substitute for experiencing the things that bring hardness in your life, because that hardness hardens you. It makes you tougher. It makes you when you're newly married and you have problems in learning how to live with your spouse, learning how to live with your family and your in-laws and your family and getting along with people. If you run to mom and dad, or if you run to your friends, you're not binding yourself with your wife. You're not binding yourself with those things that you need. And sometimes, yeah, you need help sometimes. But look for your wife or your spouse first. Try to deal with those things together. And that's how you build a relationship that lasts for the eternities. It's not something that just happens. Life isn't, like you said, if the natural order of things is to try and be as lazy as possible.
Absolutely.
And that's what
everybody's always going to try and find the easiest way to do a job.
And no, you're fine. You're fine. I'm thinking of the people who feel justified in being the aristocracy, the people who think, oh, we need to help these people that don't know how to do it themselves. They see people like that and they're like, oh, I'm just trying to help them. I don't know their intentions or anything like that, but it seems much more easy to control a people who don't think for themselves, who don't actually put the time into trying to do and make their own lives better. We talked a few weeks ago about not being a slave. Part of that not being a slave is not being dependent on anybody or anything else, but only to God. And it's like, don't put yourself in a situation where you need someone else's intervention for you to function. Don't take the ticket. I consider that taking the ticket when you're waiting for that big break or that big, someone else to come and save you from your problems. You are the cavalry. You are the one that has to solve it. Otherwise, it's not really, there's no victory in having someone else solve your problems for you. A coward dies 1,000 deaths.
Yes. No, I don't understand. I don't understand the entitlement mentality, where you can have done absolutely nothing worthwhile ever in your life and be like, oh yeah, this is owed to me. Nobody owes you shit. If you want something, you should earn it. We all know that person that's just the mooch, and they'll live off the government, they'll mooch off the family, they'll mooch off of friends.
About $20?
Yeah, $20 on my truck. You're good for it. But that's that sense of entitlement. This is owed to me. You owe me. I don't understand where it comes from, and I don't understand why somebody who's never actually done anything feels like they deserve everything.
Makes me think of how, like, the way that our brains form, the way that we grow, and your expectation in life. And it's like the way that you think the world works is you develop an expectation around you. And the only thing I can think of is when everything's given to you always, you kind of have a hard time seeing differently. And if you're that person, realize, like, pay for your own stuff every now and then, and not every now and then, do it all the time, but go out and do it, and realize, oh, every time that I borrow or I take or I get this from a friend or from a neighbor or from my mommy and daddy, every time you do that, they had to pay for that, they had to do that. And it's like, we all experience that to a degree at some point. I mean, as a toddler, you can't do things for yourself. And part of growing up is learning to do stuff for yourself. But if you're a grown person that is still relying on mommy and daddy or siblings or the government or someone else, then you haven't grown up. You've aged, but you're not grown.
If you don't earn and pay for your own things, nothing will ever truly be yours.
And that's frustrating for them. Like, think of a person that is in that situation. One of the reasons why they act out is because
So fluffy.
one of the reasons why they act out is because they have no ownership in anything. So nothing they do matters. They're just an insignificant person. And that's a frustrating position to be in. To just be a grown child, nobody takes you seriously because you don't matter. That's hell. That's like, wow, nobody listens to me. And it doesn't get better because nobody's ever going to listen to you because you're still a child.
Yeah, but who has the power to fix it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm getting at.
You know, before I worked where I worked, you know, we did okay financially for the first, I don't know, so many years of our marriage. And then I decided to take a job that gave me a pay cut so I could go pursue a different career path, because the job I had at the time didn't afford me the opportunity to go to schools and trainings and stuff like that, because, you know, it was a small company with a huge workload and we were always traveling. So I took a job and took a pay cut to go work for a city. And Katie didn't work at the time for a little while until she had to. And you know, I was trying to make do with a family of four on like $13 an hour with no assistance, no aid, like government wise. And luckily, you know, my parents helped me, and that was an easy job. It was an way easy job, but there wasn't a whole lot of potential for advancement, and there just wasn't a huge potential to better my life. So I switched jobs, and now the job that I have, the working conditions are worse. The work is a lot harder. It's hot. I had the conversation where I literally tear myself apart for my paychecks, but it's worth it. And it's so much more satisfying than that easy job that I had for the city. But I had to have help from my family. But I took it upon myself to dig myself out of the hole that I dug myself into. And you have to be willing to do that.
And those times, that's one of the things we're getting at, though. Those times where you are at your ends meet, you're doing everything you can to prepare for your family, to provide for your family. Those times when you're doing everything you can and it's simply not enough, those times are the times that make you into a man. They're the times that make you into they build you and they refine you. They make you into something of value. And it's because you you really do everything you can, and then when you've done all that you can and it's still not good enough, it's humbling. It's humbling to go have that conversation with your parents or with someone and say, can you help me? But because you're humbled, you're also grateful, and you also appreciate it, and you also look for others, and you look to see who needs help, and you pay attention, and you notice that family that is around that doesn't have everything that they need, that isn't going to have a Christmas, that isn't going to have that make ends meet, and you pay attention a little bit better to those around you because you've been there. And that's part of building a community is being the people that can help others when they're down, because you know that someone helped you. And that's what builds what builds the spirit of a nation. That's one of the things that I believe is uniquely American, is the fact that we bond together on that basis. And maybe it's not uniquely American, but it's definitely American. And when we have people that are fighting against that very attitude, that very independence, that very desire to stand on your own 2 feet and not rely on someone else, then it's like, okay, we need to make a stand. We need to have it's a cultural thing, in my opinion. We need to write our representatives and make sure that they're passing the laws and doing the things that we need. But more than that, we also need to make sure that our neighbors are good. Make sure that our neighbors are okay. Make sure that our neighbors they have what they need, but also they value freedom. You do that by talking to them. You do that by just being there for them and being the help that they need when they need it, but also promoting freedom, encouraging it.
You know, the basis for the founding of our nation, of the republic, was individual liberty, being able to make your own choices, being able to have your own stuff, life, liberty, property. That's the theme of our nation. That's the theme of the church. And speaking on the freedom aspect, a lot of people will say, well, that's selfish. Well, yeah, that's kind of the idea. Really it is. But it also comes with the realization that what's best for me is also kind of what's best for everybody else, right? You know what I'm getting at?
I see what you're getting at, but I'm still trying to wrap my mind around people actually considering that it's selfish to try and build a place where your kids can grow and thrive.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
How can you view that as selfish? That's the stupid.
Well, it's our form of government's kind of meant to, and our the way our economy's set up is to somewhat make us selfish. But somewhat
empower us to be independent.
Yes, but through that selfishness, it's also that realizing that most people are going to choose what's best for not just themselves, but for society in general. Because if society all tanks and goes to hell, then it doesn't do me much good. So most people are going to do that which is right and help build up the society to benefit them as much as it can.
I guess when you bring in like a moral structure to it, that the whole purpose of our nation, is the only way that our nation works is if people are moral. Yes, there's a clear separation between church and state, an intentional separation.
To protect them from each other.
But if the people do not have a sense of morality, if they are not righteous in who they are, if they're corrupt, then our government doesn't work. And no government will work. When people are evil, they're going to do as thou wilt. The hedonist comes, and it's like, eat, drink, be merry. Tomorrow we die. That's where you get how many abortions a year, how much needless death a year, how much slaves and just evil. Sorry, you were going somewhere and I interrupted.
No, I went where I was going. I've arrived at my destination. No, I was just saying that, in a way, yes, the way that it's constructed and the way that it's built is to promote selfishness, but that selfishness also builds a society. To build I'm going to do what's best for me, and what's best for me is, also kind of what's best for everybody. It's that building everything up in a selfish way. Righteous selfishness.
If you think of building blocks, right? You think of like the integrity of a building block. Like if you have like little blocks that a kid's building a castle or something. If you have blocks that are going to crumble and fall apart, and you build those on your base, it's going to break. Our society is built in a way that each of us, we're given our own block to make solid ourselves. And it's like you trust, like, as when the family is strong, the community is strong. When the communities are strong, the state is strong. When the states are strong, our nation, our government, our country is strong. But if the individual can't help provide for and bring the family strength, then that family crumbles. That little block that it's built on crumbles. And if those communities are full of blocks that are crumbling, the community itself crumbles. If the communities are crumbling, the state has nothing to stand on, and then the nation, the federal government breaks down.
I know it's windy.
Yeah. I like the wind, but I think it might make the sound hard. Hopefully there's a...
Do they have apps or programs that can cut it out?
They do. I don't know how to... I'm an audio engineer. What's audio engineer apprentice? I'm an audio engineer apprentice. Last time I said I was an audio engineer now. Like, great. Now I'm an audio engineer. I don't remember the right
Did you
word.
just call yourself an engineer?
No.
We're no longer friends. If you're an engineer, you should still watch.
I told you about my dad worked with a lot of engineers when he was younger, and it was like you would see they would design something, and you would see that like his job was to build it. You would see that it wouldn't work, and you couldn't just say, "Hey, this is broken. It's not going to work."
You have to make them think it's their idea.
Yeah, you have to make them think it's their idea. It's like, "Oh, this is a great design, but if pressure gets applied here, what's going to happen to this section? Oh, that'll break. It won't handle that stress. Oh, good thing I thought of that." It's like, yeah, it's a great thing you thought of that.
Good job, genius. No, we've had this week we've had at work we had this nightmare from hell all week. Oh my gosh. Blech. I thought to myself, I'm like, if I see one more of these, I'm gonna puke. And sure enough, here comes another one, and I didn't puke. but I sat there and I looked at my buddy Dave, who was welding next to me. I said, "You know what, Dave? If I ever own my own company where we manufacture things, if you want to be an engineer at that company, you're going to have worked in the shop.
There was
Experience.
Yeah.
You're going to have to actually know how to freaking build something instead of just drawing it up and saying, oh yeah, this is a great idea. No, you retard, it's not a great idea. This freaking sucks." I'm so mad. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing that I'm getting at. You get a professor who doesn't know how their own plumbing works. It's like if you isolate so much of your education into one specific thing and are blind to everything else, you're not truly educated. And there's
a difference between being educated and being smart.
Yeah, it's all words. They're stupid.
Words are dumb.
Words are dumb. The thing that I'm thinking though is like, there's no, just like we said, there's no substitute for experience. And it's like, if you, that's what I was going to say. The whole idea, jack of all trades, master of none. A lot of people say that as kind of like a a slur where it's like, oh, they're not good at anything, like a bucket mechanic, you know. It's like, oh, he has all his tools in a bucket, and he just, whatever he has in the bucket he makes do, you know, using your press wrench as a hammer. But there's a part to that where it's like there's finesse, there's beauty in refinement and in specialization, but there also needs to be a counterbalance of experience and exposure to other fields and industries. And it's like, because you don't have that exposure, you don't make nearly as good of decisions. Most of the scientific breakthroughs that happen from either someone not in the industry that the breakthrough happens, or someone who's in the industry but has been doing other things. And it's because when you're in a specific industry, you think the way that industry thinks, and you have the same mental blocks that industry has. But once you expand to different paradigms, different work, it expands the way you think about things, it expands the way that you experience things, and it gives you new ideas on how to handle things, because there's so many parallels between the different parts of life. There's no separation between physical and spiritual. It's all the same, and that expounds to fields of work as well. Like there's principles that you learn that carry over, and then again there's also things that don't always carry over.
You know, but I mean, it's, and this is my opinion from where I'm at in life and where I've been. It's much better to be able to, you know how to do all these different things than it is to know one thing really well and then suck at everything else. Unless you're like me and you just suck at everything. But no, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself specialized or super knowledgeable in really anything, but I mean, I can do a lot of things. And, you know, I don't think that there's very much that I can't be taught or given the right tools and not be able to figure out. So, yeah, I mean, talk down on other people if you want for not having a mastery in something, but how much shit can you do? How many things can you replace? How many things can you learn to make do? You know, how useful are you? Suck it. Take that.
It's so easy to. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, see what you're bringing up engineers has done.
And I just said it flippantly.
You knew this would happen.
I didn't even think about it. Nope, didn't even think about it.
You want to say something awesome?
Depends.
No, that's what you were thinking. Hey, watch this. Just bring up the word engineer.
Around Mitch. It's great.
Nope. I'm not doing it.
The thing that's so interesting though is we all have different perspectives and different things that we can bring to from our life experience. We all have different things that we can share, and along with that, everybody has something that they can share with you. It's easy, like you said, it's easy to discredit people for, oh, because of this or because of that, because of whatever, you know. But on the same breath, everybody has something you can learn from. There's something that everybody has that they could teach you, if you're willing and humble enough to learn it. And
the humility is a big part.
Exactly. I truly believe that, though. If you think, oh, if you think you're so high above people, have kids. You learn so much from them. Not just, if you pay attention, if you look, you learn so much from them. And it's like, your job is to teach them, but just watching the way that they learn and grow and interact, you have so much that you can learn from them too. And it's a beautiful thing to see. It's something that is, I think that raising kids is the closest to divinity we see in this life. And it's beautiful. And it's something that is it's the power to create is something that's what God does, and that's one of the reasons why it's so beautiful.
I agree. This has been a pretty good rant today, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully the sound is not terrible.
I think it'll be okay. But then again, it might not be.
Well, anybody who's listening,
There's nobody.
I was just
I've
gonna
looked
say.
at the views on YouTube.
I was just gonna say, anybody who's listening, they really care far more about what we're saying than actually how we're saying it. So hopefully the sound isn't.
I wouldn't give it any. Never mind, I'm stupid. I forgot the word that I was going to use.
Credence.
Yes! Learn it. I wouldn't give any credence to what I say. Anything we say.
Well, have a great week, everybody.
Don't do it.
Make it the best week of this week.
Yes. There were so many things that I wanted to share from conference, and yeah, I guess I'll just bring it up before we go.
No, I like it.
I don't know how long this has been going, but
Well,
anybody who listened to Saturday,
We're good.
how long have we been going?
I don't know how long we've been going, but it's I got some time before.
Oh yeah,
I gotta go to baptism.
I forgot about that. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
The main takeaways that I got and this is for anybody who did, or well, it's for everybody, because I was just counterproductive what I was going to say. The general takeaway from Saturday's session of conference was freedom, the Constitution, preparedness, forgiveness, and hope. Those were the takeaways that I wrote down for on Saturday. On Saturday morning, they talked a lot about freedom and the Constitution and stuff, which I was honestly starting to wonder if we were going to talk about that as a church again. And I'll be damned, they did. But so on Saturday, they said, and I didn't write down who said what.
That's fine.
But one of the things that really struck with me is life is defined by duty, not entitlement. There was also, they said, prepare for the calamities to come.
Yeah.
Saying it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But they also said that better days are ahead. They talked a lot about preparedness. And I thought it was funny.
References to Moroni, I remember.
Yeah. But they thought it was funny. We haven't talked about it for a while, but these principles haven't changed. You still need to be collecting and working and building up your preparedness and your supplies. I really liked Elder Bednar's talk.
Also, they mentioned how you're not required to go out and break the bank and go into debt to be prepared. Oh, you're getting that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It said we're not expected to do more than we can, but what we can do when we can. The Lord loves effort. Be wise, not extreme in preparedness. It is my duty to provide for my saints. And it says prepare during times of abundance. A gradual build-up, small but consistent efforts.
Yeah.
The most important step is to begin. And then again, I wrote down in here again, better days are ahead. And that's the story about the famine the worldwide famine in Egypt or whatever, where Joseph had them store all that wheat. There was bread.
Yeah.
Christ can change our existence. Christ is at the helm. I mean, and this was Saturday. I thought both sessions on Saturday were very, very powerful for the subject that they were talking about, because more is coming. It's going to be harder. And I think we all know what's coming.
I loved how I think it was the prophet who said that the Lord, he basically said the fight is the Lord's and we need to trust him.
Yeah.
And we need to do our part, and we need to do what we can in preparing and being ready and being alert and stuff, but trust the Lord. And it's like that was such a beautiful message.
I got those notes here too. It takes faith to let God prevail, and that was Sundays. Trust the Lord, let God prevail. I mean, that doesn't mean don't, try and build up your food storage and your medical supplies, and your defensive preparations. That doesn't mean don't do that.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. Yes, the Lord will provide, the Lord will step in where you come up short. And there's all sorts of things that fall into that. I mean, there's financial situations, there's storage limits of what you can and can't. And I mean, let's face it, food storage is expensive. Medical supplies are expensive. I've got a trauma kit on my gun belt that's, you've seen it, it's not very big, and that sucker cost me $200, but it has everything in there that I'll need. And so, I mean, there's so many things that are prohibitive, but that doesn't mean don't do it. If you can only afford to buy 1 or 2 bags of the Mountain House food, like the little bags that they sell at the sporting goods stores and stuff like that, do that. And then before you know it, you'll open up your tote or wherever you keep your stuff and you go, holy shit, I have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just consistent little effort.
Small but consistent efforts.
And consistency is key. Just like we had mentioned with writing Congress and being involved in politics. It's just consistent little effort.
Prayer requires labor. No blessings will be withheld from his people in the latter days. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on your preparation for this week. Just those things that they had talked about. They say bad times or worse times are coming, future calamities are coming, and that's why they were pounding that drum so hard. Maybe excuse me, maybe it's next month, maybe it's 10 years from now. I happen to think it's coming sooner than later, just watching how the road that our society is going down and everything politically that's going on. But of course I put it down and started blowing again. But just those small but consistent efforts in your preparedness, work on those. Buy, when you're out grocery shopping, buy a couple extra cans of this, a couple extra bags of these noodles, whatever. I mean, just
a box of water every now and then.
Yeah, do something. And like I've said before, buy seeds. Seeds are cheap. Make sure they're heirloom. You can get them on Amazon. And then, that's great food storage. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have other food stuffs available to you, such as canning, dehydrated, freeze dried, all that good stuff. And if you can afford to buy one, they have those freeze dryers that you can use at home.
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna buy one of those. Things that I thought previously unattainable are now more obtainable. It's great. But do those small but consistent efforts to prepare. Have faith, and like was said in conference, let God prevail. Do your best to take care of you and your family, and we will take care of each other, and the Lord will take care of us.
Keep an eye out for your neighbors.
episode 6.
Episode 6. Thanks for coming.
Not Star Wars. Booyah! Oh my goodness, Russell, you took off my microphone.